Hello, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. In the interest of time, we do have a lot of updates to get through today. And thank you all for being here. You know, we start with our land acknowledgement, and then we have quite a few updates that we want to get through. And we recognize that all of us at UW-Tacoma learn, live, and work on or near the ancestral homeland of the Coast Salish people. In particular, we are situated on the traditional territory of the Puyallup tribe. As people on this occupied territory, we have a responsibility to acknowledge the land, the ancestors who have cared for this land since time immemorial, and all of our indigenous connections today. We also have a responsibility to acknowledge the histories of dispossession and forced removal that have allowed for the growth and survival of this institution. In light of this history, let us take active efforts to partner with our indigenous community members and neighbors as we continue our work together as a community of learners, leaders, and educators. We always try to give examples to make it real. And I'm always thinking, oh, what have we done? What have we done? So I don't see Leander in the room, but we, last week, the week before Thanksgiving, we hosted our Indigenous Symposium here in this room, and it was standing room only. It was incredible to see the number of students, but also community members, and the keynote speaker, everything. It was just an incredible program. And that is just part of us building our connections with our community as we go. We also, as part of our campus master plan, Joe and I next week will be going out and doing a presentation to the Puyallup tribe and getting their input on our campus master plan as we are thinking about how we think about the future of this campus, and getting their input we think is so important to us. As I said, we are situated on traditional Puyallup tribal land. So with that, we're going to jump right into the many things that are going on. Kurt is going to give us a legislative preview, but I did want to speak to, in case you all have been hearing on the news, that there's a $10 billion shortfall, and the governor has asked state agencies to have hiring freeze and travel freeze and all of those things. So higher ed institutions are not subject to that order from the governor. They are encouraging us to do something, and the Office of Planning and Budgeting is working on what that something might be. But we know from past budget issues in our state that travel freezes and hiring freezes in the higher ed context has not worked. So we will see what they come out with in January. But we also want to reassure people that this is the projected shortfall is over a long period of time. I think it's a 4-year runway. And we still don't have the budget forecast that the legislature has to balance the budget to yet. So we are concerned, but we are not panicking about what is happening with the state budget right now. And Kurt will be able to answer any questions that you all might have about that later. But I wanted to start by just reassuring you, we know what's happening. We are concerned, but we're not panicking. So as we go forward. With that, I'm going to ask Shannon to come up, and I saw her earlier, and lead us through what is happening with enrollment, and then Cherie is going to give us an update on budget planning. Some of you may have participated in the campus master planning sessions this week with BIG, and so Joe's going to give us an update on that. You'll hear from Kurt on the legislative preview, and then we get to fun stuff, which is the holiday party with Ebony and Ann, and then Abby is going to talk to us and remind us what we are doing for holiday hours. This is our second year doing this, and we just want to make sure that people know what that is and how to plan accordingly. So with that, you all have the lineup. Just come up as people finish rather than me jumping up and down. And then we will have questions and answers at the end.
Hi, friends. How are you? Good. It's nice to see you all. For those of you that I've not had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Shannon Carr, and I serve the university as the Associate Vice Chancellor for Enrollment Services. And I've been asked to do a little enrollment update today. Okay. So wanted to give just a quick snapshot, some good news stories to share. This is the registration by class for this upcoming winter 25 term. I didn't do the math for you, but I can tell you that we're up 278 registrations, which is a 7.3% increase over last year, which looks great. The only two categories that we fall short from last year are in fifth year and non-matric, which are categories that we of course care about, but are relatively small ends in the whole picture. And so honestly, this is a great news scenario, and we should all be very proud. I do want to just say that more so than any year that I have been on campus, I've really recognized and fully felt the commitment from the entire campus community to being partners in enrollment, and enrollment being the enrollment of new students and retention of continuing students. It really feels like a synergy is coming together that is incredibly positive, and these numbers really reflect that. So it really is a reflection of the good work that everyone is doing across campus. And you'll actually see that that is entirely true. So this is the new student admission funnel for winter 2025. You'll see FTIC up here, as which is first time in college, and then transfers as well. I just showed you the 2025 numbers. I didn't do comparisons, but I will just say that we're down ever so slightly in applications for first time in college from last year, about 28 applications in total. But we are up to confirmations. So while we're down in apps, we're still up in confirmations, which is great. And on the transfer side, we're slightly down in applications and just slightly down in confirmations from last year. By slightly down, I mean 10. So it's off, but not like a wild departure from where we need to be. And just a reminder for everyone that winter orientation is on December the 17th. So for all of you, more details are coming out, and for the people that we work closely with, you, I hope, already have that on your calendar. But just a note for the general campus community. Here is the graduate admissions funnel, and by points of comparison, we're up 23% in applications, relatively small ends. I like to say the percentage because it sounds huge. It's actually 17 applications, and up 25.3% in confirmations. Again, the percentages sound fantastic, but it actually relates to 12 students. So honestly, though, 12 graduate students is great for winter term, and being up that much is fantastic. So good news story here. We have 3 terms running currently, so we're actually in the process of admitting students for spring as well. Just a point of note, all of the numbers that I'm going to share for both spring term and for autumn term, we are still in the early days, folks. So I'm sharing with you numbers, but please know that like a ton is going to change between now and the time that we hit census day for both spring and for autumn. So I suspect you know that, but I just feel like I need to caveat this. So for spring, if you'll recall, we do not admit freshmen for spring. We will have a couple of new, like less than a handful of new freshmen that start in the spring, but that's generally just exceptions to the rule than anything that we're promoting. So you'll see the transfer numbers up here. We are just slightly down in applications. I'm not overly concerned about it, six applications, but we're up in confirmations. So we're processing applications quickly and trying to convert and pay attention to yield. And then on the graduate side, this is a very different story that I'm doing some investigation on. We're actually down pretty significantly in applications. I think this is a cohort-related issue to when cohorts of students start. And so I'll know more about this when we come together next time. The applications are way down, but confirmations are just modestly down, 10 confirmations total from last year. All right, Autumn 2025, the big term, if you will, the big focus area. If you'll recall, the last few years, we have had huge application growth, somewhat related to the transition of our application to the common application, and somewhat in respective of interest just broadly. We're seeing that level out a little bit. So we have application growth, which is great. We're up 3.4% in applications, which is a good news story. But it's not, I think last year we were like, we're up 23% or something like that. I think those days of being wildly up in applications are probably behind us, but we're still up. And honestly, in the landscape of this higher ed market, that's a really nice place to be. I will also say that I think in previous years we've had a lot of applications, and which has been great, but we can do more in our yield work. So we probably don't need 5,000 more applications. I mean, wouldn't we all love that? But what we really need to pay attention to is the yield. And so one of the things that we've done this year that is a pretty big change from previous years. In the past, we did not release admission decisions until the middle of December. So usually like December 15th, we would take all of the application decisions that we had made and we would release them in a lump kind of group. This year, we didn't do that. We wanted to be the first decision out the door and in the students' mailbox, quote unquote. So we started releasing application decisions on October 6th. So we are wildly ahead of where we've been in the past. And I think we actually know that this is making an impact, particularly in our confirmations. I know that number is really small, 34, but last year we had 6. So, and that's because at this point we hadn't really even released decisions. So we know that there is an impact there, and we're really proud of it. I will also say that we're the only UW campus that's releasing decisions at this point. And we're doing this for our, for all populations of students. Transfer students, we are looking strong in this population too, up across applications and confirmations. Just a point of note, as you're working with students in our community, both the FAFSA and the WAFSA have opened as of December 1st, so we're a few days into that. It seems to be a very smooth opening. Last year we had no good news to share at this point, and it seems like this is going swimmingly. They did a beta testing just before December 1st, and everything's been rolling really smooth. I do think it's really important just to note for our community that there is a lot of conversation across our community as well as in the broader context about how undocumented students, and in particular, how students who are citizens but their parents are undocumented are going to complete the FAFSA or the WAFSA this year. If you have any students that fall into this category, I think there is, with the change in with the new administration coming in, I think there's a lot of concern amongst families about completing any federally based forms. And so if students have any concerns about how to navigate this process, please have them speak to folks in our with our financial aid team, and they can help give guidance and counsel in a really thoughtful manner for these students for whom that is a big trigger point, if you will. So also for our continuing students, please, please, please tell them to get out and start doing the FAFSA now. You can be our biggest advocates in getting students to complete that process. This is based on prior tax information, so they don't need to do anything with their taxes. It should all be done for them to go out and get the FAFSA completed. And then here's the oops, I went backwards. Here is the graduate admissions funnel. And this is honestly dead even with last year. The applications and the confirmations are exactly even with where we were last year. The last thing that I just want to share is a little bit about what I've talked about previously, which is strategic enrollment planning. Over the past year, we have done a lot of work with strategic enrollment planning, starting in January of 2024, where we had our strategic enrollment planning kickoff. On those days, we had 2 days of intensive listening and learning sessions. And that generated a comprehensive list of institutional strengths and opportunities, which we've begun working on and are later integrated into our strategic enrollment planning work. In February, we hosted a series of campus workshops and to share those strengths and opportunities and to generate new ideas as we moved forward. In March, we brought together a group of leaders from across the campus and did a leadership retreat, taking those strengths and opportunities and then developing and refining 6 core focus areas for our strategic enrollment planning work, which include high school recruitment, transfer recruitment, graduate enrollment, adult learner engagement, and then strategic enrollment data intelligence. In October of this past year, we brought together groups of people to do strategy work around each of those core areas. So we had teams of people come together and identify strategies for the strategic enrollment plan across those core areas. And then came back together in November to further refine those strategies and to put timelines and resource allocations with the strategies that were developed. Our next steps are to develop the written plan, which will include enrollment goals. As that written plan is developed, it will be shared with executive leadership and finalized with their feedback before it's shared with the larger campus community. And then we are working on a process currently, sort of simultaneous to that, for a campus rollout so that we can share the entire strategic enrollment plan with the campus community, and you can start to see and visualize the ways that you can contribute to that work in its ongoing format. So that, and the hope is that we will get the development of the written plan done by the new year and then start the rollout in just after the new year. So that is a little bit about enrollment and strategic enrollment planning. Are there any questions before, or do we want to save questions to the end? I don't know the format here. Okay. I guess we're saving to the end. So hold your questions and we'll answer them later. All right, budget, Sri.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see you. And I have about 10 minutes. There is a lot of content in these slides, and I want to start by pointing out that these are all from a budget kickoff presentation that we did a couple of weeks ago. It was recorded and it's on the F&A budget planning website. So you could actually see these slides and it gone into in more depth on our website. And you can also download the slide deck if you're interested in getting that detailed. So I would like to start with a quick update on where we are with enhanced monitoring. Those of you who have been around for a few years know that we've been under enhanced monitoring by the Seattle campus related to our budget being higher than our forecasted revenue historically back a few years ago. So as you know, we took 2 years of cuts of about 1.7%. The cumulative amount that we saved in those cuts was about $2.4 million. And that has made a big difference in keeping our growth at a more sustainable level. We also, with this 4% enrollment increase that we've seen this year, is very helpful to us going forward. We have been in conversations with the Office of Finance Planning and Budget in Seattle, and at this point we anticipate this being our last year of enhanced monitoring, except for a debt service covenant that we're working on, that we expect to have discharged in 27. I want to take the chance, since you're all here, and hopefully it's large enough for you to see, to give you a bit of a context of what our fiscal situation is and has been here in Tacoma. This is a dual axis chart on the right side, and the line is enrollments, and then our spending is, or our funding received from tuition and the state is in the bars. So essentially what you can see is that we did dip down at the beginning of the COVID era and are just starting to come back up. However, our spending really never went down in alignment with our enrollment, which is understandable because 85% of our expenditures are personnel related. And just because there's fewer people in classes doesn't mean you need fewer faculty or fewer people to maintain the campus. So that's one of the real challenges in higher ed is that it's not easy to scale just because enrollment drops. It is easier to scale up than to scale down. This is a quick sense of where our revenue comes from. About $45 million is coming from our operating fee, that's of tuition. Our state fund allocation is about $30 million, and we have a small amount from summer tuition, and proviso funds are noted. They're legislative commitments to us that are dedicated to very specific things like engineering programs. And then we have a very small amount of other designated resources, things like research administration, we call ICR, and other fees. Where do our funds go? How do we spend them? And as I said before, mostly on people. So instruction and research related compensation is the largest, professional staff compensation second, then classified and hourly, and our spending on supplies, materials are quite minimal. You can see professional services are contracts that we engage in. And this is all from last year, so it is closed. Our reserves at the end, estimated at the end of this year at around 28% of our operating budget. We're still dealing with some changes from the financial transformation that mean we're still having to make some adjustments that we anticipate Seattle will be making this year, but we are essentially expecting to grow in our ending balance and grow our reserves by the end of this year. So this is a table helping to speak to what causes our budget to change. And so the key budget drivers for us, and almost all public higher ed institutions, are wage increases, benefit increases, or benefit changes. This gives you a sense of, in the last few years, wages have been 4% increase in 23-24, then 3% this year, and we estimate 3% again next year as a whole, across the whole institution. Fringe benefits, we're still not 100% certain what that will be next year, but we did see a full percent, more than a 1% increase in our benefits this year, and that wasn't announced until after we finalized our budget. So we ended up scrambling, and you'll see that these kinds of things are what kind of affect your available bottom line quite a bit. We do know what tuition will be for resident undergrads for this coming year. The legislature approves that earlier than it used to. So that's generally going up by 3.3%. And we anticipate typically the regions have control of setting the tuition for non-residents and graduate programs. They usually follow the legislature. So we anticipate they'll probably increase those tuition rates by 3.3%. Our enrollment, of course, is a huge impact on our budget. So you can see, fortunately, we are seeing by head count a 4.8% in undergrad, and that in total about a 4% increase. We have budgeted for a 3.5% increase for next year, which was thrilling to hear Shannon say our applications are up by 3.3%. So we were optimistic. I also want to point out something that isn't so well known is that the legislature has a policy that only partially funds pay raises each year. And so the policy of the legislature the last few years, potentially this coming year, is to cover about 60% of the cost of raises that we provide to our campus or to the university, 40% has to come from tuition revenue. If tuition revenue is declining, you do not have more tuition revenue. That is one of the reasons we had to take cuts. But it's important to know that it's over $500,000 annually that we have to absorb from local resources for compensation. So our planning process coming up, we will include, instead of a 1.67% cut, we still will be including a 0.75% cut scenario campus-wide. Different schools, units, and areas may be varying that a bit based on their needs. That's at the level of the vice chancellor or executive vice chancellor to determine. This will allow for a small amount of funds for reinvesting in new commitments. There are pages of let me just see if no, I did not. If you go to our website, you'll be able to find the forms that are used for submitting budget requests, budget cuts, and it's important to note if there's any personnel proposals that you want to make, adding any positions, you need to use a separate form for that and work with our HR team. So those are not treated as just general adds or reductions. And our schedule, we have kicked off. UW Seattle is just kicking off as well this week. So for the next few months, there will be time for the divisions, schools, units to work on their budget requests and their reductions. Budget Advisory Council and, a committee and other groups will be consulted November, actually probably through February. And then we will need those schools that have self-supporting programs or off-tier graduate programs are going to have to submit their tuition proposals to me in mid-January, and I will share those with Seattle. And then we will have other deadlines that are due to the Finance Planning and Budget Office in Seattle in January and February. So if you have any questions as you or your teams are working on that, you can, first of all, come to the website and make sure you've seen what resources are already there. I'm available for assistance for anyone outside academic affairs, and Dustin Ashley is available to assist anyone in academic affairs. The due date for forms to me is January 16th, but it's likely that your Vice Chancellor will have an earlier deadline so that they have a chance to consolidate and sort through anything you may be proposing. So chances are it'll be closer to the end of December for everybody else. And I guess questions will be held to the end, but thank you for your attention. And if you ever want to just follow up with a one-on-one with me, my email is here. Feel free to contact me with any questions. So thank you.
So now we're going to talk about the campus master plan. Thank you for those of you who participated in our sessions the last 2 days with our consultants. We're working through the plan, and I want to show you a sampling of the slides and how to get access to the website that shows you exactly where we are, that has all of the documentation for what has been talked about, the direction they're heading. We had a great conversation with our consultants. They're called BIG, the Bjark Ingels Group, yesterday, and they talked about, they complimented us for how transparent this process is on our campus and how we are engaging students, faculty, staff, and our community, which I was a little bit surprised. I was like, what do you mean? And they said, that is not common at many universities across the country. Administration sets the master plan and tells the campus community what is going to happen. And I was a little bit shocked by that. That is not our culture. So this is the process. And let's see if I can see this. Oh, I can look right here. So they started with us this last summer. We had a little bit of a glitch. You may have noticed that we had no power for about a month. So we moved the calendar around and shifted to, they came here in October, met with us, and then they came here again yesterday. We are at this point of defining the framework and thinking about adjacencies and where pieces need to be and what needs to be next to each other and building kind of the framework. These are, you've seen this slide before, but these are the key areas that line up with our strategic plan. And these are the things that they have heard from our community. In expanding access for students, it's very clear that we need student housing and dining. That has resonated extremely clearly to them. Amenities for students, developing services, gathering friendly spaces, wellness, and providing a hub for wellness on campus, building community, addressing the local community's needs. So I'm not going to read all of this to you. I'm going to show you where to go get it. And you've seen this before. This is a framework that we kind of started after the last gathering in October. I did want to show you this because this is some of the things that they've identified that are emerging that need to be part of the plan. In academic facilities, student services, public programs, the infrastructure, and the landscaping and the pieces that tie all of this together. You may have noticed that we reside on a hillside. We've spent a fair amount of time talking about accessibility and how do we access that and how do we make it an accessible and welcoming place that people can navigate. And you can do that, a lot of that, not all of it, with the landscaping and the way that we move people through campus. So again, I'm not going to read all of this to you, but these are the things that they've identified. I will highlight some key things in here, though. You'll notice in student services, that 12%, housing for 12%, that's just, we've somewhere between 10 and 15% of students living on campus and building housing for them. Food services, wellness hub, and childcare. If Sylvia were here, which Sylvia is in another meeting right now talking about our housing. We had to kind of split up for this because housing is moving forward and we're hoping to have an RFP out for that to begin moving. Our current timeline is to have housing open in autumn of 2028. So there's some other things on here that people have noticed. You'll see right here, grocery store. That has emerged heavily from all populations, actually. Staff, students, faculty, and strongly yesterday from the community, especially the community that lives in the downtown core. Yeah, I'll let you navigate this. I just wanted to show you some of the, if you didn't have a chance to participate yesterday, this is some of the things they're starting to look at in terms of some of the key pieces and what they need to be adjacent to. So I'll just pick one. Student housing clearly needs to be adjacent to food services, needs to be adjacent to the student hub, cafes, open spaces. You can start to see in this how these pieces of the puzzle begin to fit together. And I wanted to end, first of all, because I really like this photo. But this shows our campus from up here at the corner. It's down here on the slide, but at the corner of Tacoma Avenue and 17th, goes all the way down to 21st on Tacoma Avenue, and then down the hill. And it shows, I like to call this our opportunity, moving as we move up the hill. But I also wanted to show you, this site exists on the Chancellor's webpage with the campus master planning. It starts with, remember a couple of years ago we did these open public spaces meetings and the edges meeting, and so it has the videos from those. But all of these documents as we've moved through this exist here. And these slides I pulled out of this presentation that goes through all kinds of scenarios and some examples of other campuses. This is Portland State. So I encourage you to go look through this. And if you haven't yet, there's on that website, there are 2 surveys here, one for faculty, students, and staff, and one for community members. If you haven't had an opportunity to give feedback, we are still accepting feedback into this plan. So that is my part, and now Kurt is right here.
Hey everyone, so Sheila touched a little bit on the kind of budget circumstances the state faces. And quickly, for those that don't know me, Kurt Colvis, our Director of Government Relations here on campus. And I'll just touch on it briefly a little bit more. You're hearing something about a $10 to $12 billion shortfall that the state is facing. Sounds pretty ominous, right? But that's, for the balanced budget over 4 years. While we have to balance the budget over 4 years, we pass 2-year biennial budgets. So, when we talk about the spending things we're interested in and the programs we're interested in, we're talking about that 2-year budget. We're still talking, then around a $5 to $6 billion shortfall. This is really being driven by, spending obligations the state has. The state is still collecting more revenue this biennium than it did in the past. We're going from about a $67 billion budget to a $71.5 billion budget. But a variety of programs and collective bargaining agreements and things that the state is committed to is driving the shortfall we're concerned about. So, in a couple of weeks here, we are going to see a budget out of Governor Inslee. The governor always proposes a budget ahead of session that is kind of considered a starting point, but, rarely is super reflective of the budget we see at the end of session. I'll warn you, it may seem bad, the news that comes out of that, because he'll be proposing an all-cuts budget, most likely. I assume the legislature, and from what I'm hearing, is going to be looking at a variety of revenue solutions to deal with this budget shortfall. And I preach that it's not quite as maybe dire as it sounds, while it still will bring a lot of scrutiny to every line of the budget, right? So that's maybe the main preview I'd give to all of you, is if you hear from FPB during session and they're wanting to know about proviso funds your student or your unit receives, or something about your program, I would be highly responsive, and please give me a heads up if they haven't looped me in on that outreach. So I'll let that bring us to what our agenda is here on the Tacoma campus. You can find, as of last night, the full UW legislative agenda on the Office of External Relations website. So go and just Google it, it'll pop up for you. But the big ask for all of UW continues to be dealing with that compensation fund split that Cherie touched on. As long as me or someone like me has been chatting with you, this has been a legislative request out of the universities in the state. This, following what Cherie talked about, essentially what we look at with them only covering 60% of our compensation increases is having to make up that other 40% means we are having to cut somewhere, because tuition increases don't always track those increases we see from compensation. So the community technical colleges received a 100% fund split, so not a fund split from the state this last biennium on a one-time basis. And so we have synced up with them, all of the universities, public universities in the state, and are telling the legislature it's time to get rid of this fund split. It was originally conceived in a time when the idea was UW could just raise tuition to deal with it, and then the state took control of how much we raised tuition as well. So it has chronically underfunded education since the 2008 recession, and we believe it's time to deal with that. Now, you may look at that, $67 million for all of UW, and it seems maybe poorly timed with the shortfall that we're facing. Maybe yes and no. I would say, all the universities are still united in pushing for this. And I think kind of using this as an opportunity to look into all the ways we're funded. And, reset kind of expectations and the way funding from the state flows and how we look at tuition increases. It's kind of an opportunity for a holistic look. So there will probably be a lot of interesting developments in this space. I find it doubtful the governor's budget in 2 weeks will fund this increase. But this will be the primary work of me and my colleagues within UW and the other four-year institutions and CTCs this legislative session. So then that brings us to two Tacoma-specific provisos that we're going for this session. So one, building on work that's been ongoing for years now, we're requesting funding for increasing nursing workforce in the South Sound. So our primary goal is getting towards a pre-licensure four-year BSN program, but it takes a lot of years to develop tri-campus curriculum, as well as get certified and all these different things that are accredited. So what we do is we're able to leverage the investments now in creating a doctor of nursing practice program to deal with a substantial shortfall of nursing educators across the country, but especially here in our community. And then we were able to increase our current RN to BSN cohort to meet kind of the coming demand. When I first joined the university 2 years ago, Workforce Central had estimated that we were going to be 1,000 nurses short in Pierce County by 2027. I'm working with them on an updated number, but I imagine the problem has only become more acute. The state passed a new safe staffing levels bill for nurses, which is important and good for patient safety and health, but is just going to make this problem even more acute. So this is our effort here in Tacoma, and this is just a Tacoma ask, even though we're developing the curriculum for the Tri-Campus School of Nursing, to grow this right here and try to address this need. So really excited about that. That'll be, a lot of my time will be taken up talking about this coming session. And then this past biennium, we were funded on a one-time basis for some of the amazing student support work that's happening on our campus. We've already seen great results out of this, and unfortunately, we have to go back and try to make this funding ongoing since it was only given on a one-time basis. I think there's opportunity there for us to define or share the unique approach we take on student support and how we center it in our work here. And kind of show the state why investing in this is important. I mentioned they're going to be fine-tooth combing everything. There's a variety of provisos that have been in the budget for all agencies, but especially UW, for mini biennium without probably a lot of scrutiny. Incoming Governor Bob Ferguson has already, on the campaign trail, been talking about we need to address agency waste as we look at this kind of spending increase and the budget shortfall it leads to. So I imagine, line by line, they will be going through and assessing whether these provisos are having their effect and if the investment is worth it. So this is our chance to, in a way, be ahead of that and really, make them understand that we, need that support from the state to continue this important work. So that's my email, that's my cell. During a legislative session, I'm down in Olympia a lot of the time, so always feel free to call or text if it's an urgent matter. And, I will again reiterate, if you are receiving questions from me or FPB January to April, typically those are we need to respond within 24 to 48 hour type situations. And this year, it's more critical than ever that we get those answers that legislators are looking for. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ebony Peterson, the events manager here on campus. I work with both our advancement team, so bringing in the funds, and our party people, AKA the events and conference services office. Woo woo. I am lucky enough to only have one slide, and it's a picture. So yay, Joe. So thank you, everyone. So this year, for those of you who were here last year, our staff and faculty holiday party is much the same thing. This beautiful graphic done by our marketing team, so thanks to them. It's just honestly a end of the calendar year celebration, right? We put the word holiday on it just because we all know what's kind of happening between these November, December months, but it's really a celebration of the work that you do, the work your colleagues do, and an opportunity for us to come together in a casual light. site. So I hope that you will join us for food, conversations, the Staff Association, wow, say that fast. Staff Association has sponsored some fun arts and crafts this year, so card making, bookmark making, all different types of stuff too, if you're not a conversation starter, to kind of hide away. We'll also have some games, so everything from, indoor golf, we promise we won't break anything, and cornhole, all those kind of fun things that you can do to really enjoy the space. And of course, there'll be food and just a really good time. If you are so inclined to add a little sparkle onto your day, we are bringing back the ugly sweater or festive sweater for the theme this year, or secondarily, feel free to dress up. We're calling it like campy winter prom. So some of us might be wearing some, sparkles with fur. I'm gonna bring out my big ski bunny hat in my full ball gown. So it'll be a fun time. I really hope that you'll join us. We have over 120 staff members already, so I encourage you to continue to, staff and faculty, apologies. I encourage you to continue to spread the word to your colleagues in your departments. If you know that some folks aren't going, let them know that, even if they could only stay for 30 minutes, it really is a fantastic opportunity for us all to connect. If you would like to be more involved with gift wrapping, setting up, tearing down, helping me hang things from the very high ceilings, please let me know. You can answer on this QR code right here as far when you register, or feel free to Teams or email me directly. But I hope to see you all next Wednesday. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I think I've met most of you, but I'm the HR director, Abby Zorn, and I'm here to talk about our holiday hours, or our winter break hours. So these, I believe, are the same as they were last year, which is that the campus will largely be closed for the week of December 23rd up through New Year's Eve. And this is just really a reminder for supervisors and teams to work together to figure out coverage, who's working remotely, who's taking time off, making sure that essential things still are getting done if they need to be. And as last year, buildings should be accessible. They just might be in low power modes. You might want to reach out to facilities in advance, but if you need to come in and grab something, that should be fine. And just make sure that any client groups or customers or students who might be looking for you are aware of your hours during this time. But yeah, I think that's it.
Questions and answers.
And answers.
As opposed to just questions. I have many questions. Great. So as normal, the microphones are here. And did we get anything in advance? No? No questions in advance? Okay.
I had one question in advance, but I responded directly to it.
Oh, well, there you go. Okay, there's a question.
Hi. Earlier, it was discussed that with the administration switch, there might be some issues with like undocumented students with financial aid, and to refer them to financial aid. This campus financial aid hours are really short in comparison to like the other two campuses. Like they're 12 to 2, both in person and by phone. And when they're overwhelmed with emails, it might be hard for them to reach every email. So like, how do you want to like figure out a way to make sure that these students can get heard and also your staff aren't like overwhelmed?
Great. There's, just pass it right there to Memphis so she can answer that question.
I'm actually going to defer to Shannon.
And maybe address the issue about why our office hours are different than the others.
Yep, I appreciate that feedback. So in enrollment services, we have a consolidated service desk for the offices of admission, the Office of the Registrar, and the Office of Financial Aid and Scholarships. And so students are welcome to stop by the Mattress Factory 251 anytime from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., and there will be someone there that can address their concern and talk with them about any of the content area in the Office of the Registrar, the Office of Financial Aid and Scholarships, or the admission office. With financial aid and scholarships, I think it is important to note that the level of detail that goes into those kinds of questions is very intensive. And so in some cases, they may be asked to schedule an appointment with someone in financial aid and scholarships directly. We have a 24-hour response time to emails in that office. So so all of them are addressed in 24 hours and, or at least acknowledged within 24 hours. Sometimes, like I said, those require a greater level of detail. And honestly, email and chat are hard ways to communicate about financial aid because the back and forth is pretty exceptional. So we try to connect mostly by phone. I will say that the team is available every single day in person during the Husky Hour because that's when we see most of our students. So that's why those hours are centered, and then the rest of the time is addressing student concerns by phone, appointments, or email. So they are here every day. We just center their in-person time and then direct people to the, to the one stop, if you will.
Thank you. And thank you for that question. That's great.
No questions.
One more.
Don't.
We like questions.
Thank you.
So I live really far north, so I've been able to like see the other campuses and how they've established themselves since I've moved here. And I was just wondering why there isn't like any like thing about like TCC possibly partnering with us, because part of the way Bothell is set up, they have Cascadia and Bothell on the same thing, and that's probably why they've been able to get dorms faster than us and all that stuff. So I was just wondering, like, is there an idea to try to do a similar thing here with like TCC to try to get enrollment and also more resources potentially?
We've actually partnered with TCC and Pierce College and South Puget Sound because, and Green River and Highline. So we have multiple partnerships with multiple community colleges that are our feeders. In terms of the housing, we did have a partnership with TCC to provide housing through the Tacoma Housing Authority. That didn't work the way that the Tacoma Housing Authority wanted it to work, so then we went to our own model of subsidized place-based subsidies for housing, and that actually added a lot more sense of urgency to us to do residence halls. And I think that the difference between the Bothell and Cascadia relationship is just, it's very different than what we have. I mean, they share a campus, and it's not always an easy sharing. And they also have other community college partners, not just Cascadia. And we've tried to sort of leverage the many partnerships that we have by, we share, for example, advisors with South Puget Sound, Pierce, and Tacoma. So we have staff people who work on both campuses to help students transfer. We still have a lot more work to do in facilitating transfers. It's just not, it's not as seamless as we would like it to be, and we continue to get that feedback from students. So even sharing advisors, there are still barriers to students transferring. So it is still very much a priority for us. I think they were able to get housing faster because they already had concentrated housing together, and we didn't. We just have our Court 17. They had multiple buildings, and I know that because my nephew was an RA in their apartments that they had there.
Hello, hello. Okay, it works. Hi, my name is Sam. I'm a business finance major, and I just started this quarter, excited to start and excited to meet the whole community. And I have a question with regard to collaboration between the administration and with students, and sort of with opportunities to be able to, not just with legislative work, but just be able to establish those partnerships and connections and sort of be able to help administration as well as sort of continue that collaboration and establish those relationships. And I was wondering if there was any opportunities for sort of doing that, or for advertising, or sort of plans that were in the process of being able to collaborate with the students and administration.
Yes, so we had a student advisory board that was an advisory board to the chancellor last year, and it was not well attended, so we are working with Moira from ASUWT to try and figure out what would be an alternative to that. Some of the deans do have their student advisory boards, and so those are meeting with the school levels. But we've tried to think about alternative ways for the administration to connect with student groups. So that means going to student events, going to student organizations and clubs, and we've brainstormed a list of things that we might do, and so we're going to be working with ASUWT to roll that out, because the advisory board, I don't know if it's just our students who work. We heard a lot of concern about students being asked to come to yet another meeting, so it just didn't pan out the way we wanted. So we're now thinking, okay, what are the existing clubs and orgs and events where students are that we can get the administration out to, rather than asking you to come to another meeting. So if you have some ideas about places you think we should show up and be in conversation, I'm really anxious to hear them.
Can I make a plug?
Yes.
In student affairs, we have a student impact team. In student affairs, we have a student impact team that we're putting together to help with things like supporting Day on the Hill and things of that nature as an advocacy point. And we are actively looking for participants. So plug.
Yes, you don't have to have a question. You can actually do shameless plugs.
Yeah, I did. I saw the students in the room shaking their head about asking them to go to yet another meeting. So I understand. So I just hear from our students. Many of them are working, or they have families, and they just don't have time to do the kind of engagement traditional engagement. So we just have to think about different ways of engaging with our students and meet them where they are. Yeah.
So just to quickly follow up on that, so we also welcome informal conversations. So just the way you pose questions today, that is really great. So if it's sending an email message or a conversation with any faculty or staff member, that's really going to be impactful. I'll give you an example. Last year from the Student Advisory Committee, we did hear students were saying, we don't want to come to another meeting, we're inundated with email messages, we're not looking at the website, but we don't know what's happening on campus. And the only way we really do pay attention to what's happening is through Canvas. So that created the opportunity for us to receive special permission to post certain notices on Canvas, and so far the feedback has been responsive. So I'm seeing folks nodding your head, like, you got a message from me the other day that talked about, preparing for finals, right? So that was in direct response to feedback from students. So I say that to say that we hear it, we understand, we process it, and we try to make it responsive to meet that particular need.
Great, which is why the financial aid question was really important too, because we want to make sure that we are meeting the needs of students with office hours. That's one of my particular pet peeves. People know I'm like, I want the offices to be open. Everybody's laughing because they know that's my pet peeve. I'm like, the offices must be open. Okay, great.
I'm just going to give you your own microphone.
No, I'm.
It should be.
Hello?
There you go.
Yay! Less of a question and more of a personal thing I've been going. So this is my first quarter here in Washington. I'm from Florida, so it's been a drastic change. And I actually feel like I can do stuff here, which is great. But I've been noticing these like inequities on campus, been trying to figure out how to advocate, and I'm like, oh, guys, strength in numbers. And I've been like asking my cohort, like, you want to join? And everybody's doing the same thing that you're getting of like, we don't have time. So I'm trying to figure out like, if we can make like little, since, you know, departments have their own committees half the time, if we can find like maybe like a few representatives per department to come together, maybe the ones that are, you know, already going to these clubs, so they have that time to see if we can do that cross communicating, especially since like, you know, I'm in school psych and then like social work's downstairs from our department, and, you know, 2 advocacy-based programs, I feel like they would heavily want to participate. And so I'm thinking, I'm like still mulling it over, but I'm trying to think if there's any way we can like get students that way of like integrating it with like their like knowledge and their like education, like what they're already practicing a little bit, and trying to like make it real world to them.
Yeah, well, okay. That's a great idea. I want to talk to you some more. That's a great idea. Thank you. Because we have not gotten the student advisory boards together in each of the schools. I think they, you know, they meet with their dean and they don't talk across. So that's a great idea. Thank you. Okay, we are at time. Thank you all for making time today. Thank you, as always, for the work that you're doing. And please come to the holiday party. There will be sparkling, okay, yes, that stuff, at 4:30. Okay. There will be lots of fun to be had at the holiday party.